Well, good evening. Welcome to the inaugural episode of We Are the Game. I'm Luke and that's Michael, not to be confused with that being Luke and this being Michael. And we're just going to talk about week one of the NFL, the matchups that are coming up, and more what we're thinking is going to happen, not so much what we hope will happen, but I'm sure that some of what we hope is going to leak in there because I have a favorite and he's got a favorite. So, that being said, it's our first time doing this. This is rough. You're welcome to tell us all about how rough it was down in the comments. I may even say something about how rough it is in the comments myself. But yeah, we'll have a good time. So,
Sounds
you
good.
want to say anything before we get into the first game, or just want to jump right in?
Not too much. Just excited that we finally made it this far. We've only been talking about this since the end of last season, and just like, oh man, what a drought it's going to be. So just excited to be a day away from getting back deep in the weeds of football.
Yes, yes. I've actually gotten sick of watching stuff about football. I just need to see it actually happen. So, without any further ado, spend a couple of minutes talking about the first game. For reference, it is now Wednesday, September 4th. So we are just a day, thank God, away from Baltimore at Kansas City. Um, it's coming off the AFC Championship. I really see Baltimore as they should come back into this healthy. Mark Andrews being absent for their last game, I think, really affected them. So I think Baltimore is going to win. I think they've started out most years relatively well. Kansas City started out years a little bit rough, and I can see Baltimore edging out a win. I don't think it matters as much. I think that Baltimore will be super hyped up, like we've got to win this game. And Kansas City's like, hey guys, we're going to the playoffs again. Let's just stay healthy. Obviously, they're going to try to win, but I just
Sure.
feel like Baltimore is going to pull this one off. So yeah, we'll see. Throw this in there as well, just because that means I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would just take Baltimore straight up. And I think I would take the under, though. I think I'd go with more like 42 or something like that total points. I think defense is going to abound. So, how do you see it?
Mm. Yeah, I think I agree with you that they're both good teams, right? They're both well-rounded teams, and I think this could go either way. I think I would go the other way on the money end. I think I would probably be on the Kansas side, just from a if I come down to here's some changes. I'm very interested to see how the changes in Baltimore play out, but. It's hard not to stick with Pat and like, hey, is he going to be coming out the gate firing and on all cylinders? He seems like a safer bet as far as how I think those two offenses are going to play out. Both have good defenses. I think my money is going to be on Kansas on that one. In the Philly Green Bay game, I'm going to go against my heart on this one and actually say I think Philly's going to win. While I'm not necessarily excited about that as a Dallas Cowboy fan, I do think that they'll win that. I do think Green Bay showed last year that they've got a lot of great things going for them, but and there's been some significant changes in Philly. But my money is probably on Philly pulling out the early season win there, and we'll see how those teams play out through the rest of the season. What about you?
Yeah, kind of same. Green Bay did not start out last year all that well, and there's this belief that they're going to just roll with the end of last year's momentum right into the start of this
Mm-hmm.
year. I don't know that there's any like scientific evidence to suggest that that's really how this works. If anything, the
Yeah.
trend is more year on year, the way I would look at it. And Philadelphia has started out the last 2 years, like the first half of the last two seasons combined, they're like 16-1 or something. Like it's nuts.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely with you there. I'm not super, I mean, I don't care as much about Philly as you do, but I don't know, they're getting kind of annoying,
Yeah.
especially in the aforementioned first half of seasons. So then with
Right.
Saquon, Green Bay's defense is
Mm-hmm.
got a little better.
Right.
I like that safety they added, but like they've still got a ways to go. So I think I'm going to take Philly to win this one. And one last thing, I guess I would. I mean, it's just a 2.5 point spread. They're basically thinking Green Bay's going to win. That's impressive. They're just giving Philly home field advantage, basically. But I'd take Philly 2.5 points. You may as well just go ahead and take the points. And I think I'll actually take the over on this one. 49.5. I think it'll be at least 50 points scored. So I would take that. You any different on? I mean, again, we're not probably going to put any money on this, but would you see them going over or under?
I don't know. I'd stay. I'm going to
24.
stay with the under. I think it could. I think it. There's always a potential, but I'd probably bet on
Yeah.
that side.
Okay. Fair enough. Next, first game of Sunday, early block, 1:00 p.m. Eastern. So Pittsburgh's going to Atlanta. Atlanta has a ton of. It's interesting. Both of these teams were heavily in the news all off season. Not all for the best of reasons, but
Right.
there's a lot of excitement for Atlanta in particular. They made a couple of fun last minute additions with. Was it Justin Simmons? Who was it? They added that safety. I've forgotten which one. There were several what were marquee safeties not long ago, and they added Matthew Judon, but the big addition obviously is Kirk Cousins. So there's a lot of excitement that they're just going to explode right out the gate and win 12 or 13 games this year, especially because they're in a pretty wishy-washy division.
Right.
And Pittsburgh's drama was a little different. It was just about which one of these kind of weird quarterbacks is going to be our guy. And I'm not sure either one of them is. That all being said, I really like their coach, and I like TJ Watt, so I'm going to pick Pittsburgh. That was a roundabout way of saying my choice isn't going to make sense, but that's what I'm going with. Just for week one, I think it's going to take Atlanta a minute to get things kind of sorted out. This one, I think I might take the under, even though over-under is only 41.5. I think I might take the under.
Yeah.
So, about you?
I think I'm sticking on the Atlanta side. I think I agree with you on the coaching. Like the coaching's solid. You know what your defense is on Pittsburgh. I totally get that. I just think the chance of the Pittsburgh offense being shockingly anemic, I think is really a real possibility. And there's been so much change in Atlanta, and there's a lot of new things there as well. But I think as strange as it is, the solidity at a quarterback really makes me feel more comfortable going with Atlanta. I'm actually really excited to see what he makes of Pitts, and how that offense really comes around with all of that. They've got a very talented group of guys. It's just, can they figure that out early? Or is it going to, like you were talking about with Green Bay, or is it going to take them a minute to like, oh yeah, that's right, and then we'll move on? But my take is going to stick with Atlanta.
Makes sense.
Now here's one to pull at your heartstrings though, is the Buffalo Arizona game. That'll be the game that I'm trying to watch for sure. Yeah, but yes, that too. But I'll be definitely. I do think Buffalo will take that. I think that Arizona, like we talked about many times, Arizona's made some great changes, some great additions. But I just want to see them put that together. I think Buffalo's scary, and they're pretty consistent. So that's kind of the direction I would go on that game. How are you feeling on that one?
You can call it whichever one you want. Definitely a homer pick. I will pick Arizona as the short version of this. You can skip along 30 seconds if you want to hear my insane rationalization. But Buffalo kind of tripped over themselves coming out the gate last year. Obviously, it's a much better defense. They opened last year against the Jets, where Aaron got injured and so on. They still lost that game. Josh threw 3 picks. It was just a rough game. Again, we don't have the Jets defense.
Right.
So I would definitely pick the over here. I don't care if the over was 55, I might still take the over here. I could see this being like a 33 to 36 kind of nonsense, not a defensive showcase. So one reason that gives me some hope beyond the changes Arizona has made is that Buffalo lost a lot of their leadership, their player leadership. So I do feel like that's going to be felt. It may be an upgrade. Maybe guys behind Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Mike Hyde will all, these young guys are going to come up and be just exploding out of their shoes, just taking the world by storm. I don't know. But I guess I've got my fingers crossed. But we'll see how that goes. But like I said, I would take the over. I'm going to take the Cardinals to somehow pull it off. The only sample size I have recently I was playing them was like a miracle win over them with the Hail Murray 4 years ago. So we don't play them very often, as you might expect, interconference and all that. But that's kind of where I land.
Yeah,
Yeah, pulling at my heartstrings is inaccurate. Yanking my heart clear out is what's about to happen. Sorry, so.
yeah, that's going to be nice about it.
But without any further pain-inducing nonsense, uh, next game. Let's just get away from the Cardinals.
Just
We got Tennessee and Chicago, and this has got to be one of the lower. Like, it's a tough game to pick for me because I do like some of what Tennessee did, but Chicago did more. Now, I'm not super comfortable picking Chicago consistently at this point, like looking ahead, because I don't know what Caleb Williams is going to do. But he has one of the best receiving cores maybe any rookie has ever had. Between Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Roma Dunze, the guy they just drafted. So they should be killing it. And their defense ended fairly strong last year. Tennessee, I like some of what they did. It's a much shorter assessment for Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like, I like some of what they added. Calvin Ridley. I'm hoping Will Levis, this weird mayonnaise guy, can be better going into year 2. But I think Chicago kind of has a leg up on him this year, and I'm going to miss seeing Derrick Henry dress up as a Titan. But I will pick Chicago for this game to win at home. I think I'll even take the over at 44.5. So, yeah. What's your take on that one?
Yeah, very similar. I think that I think they are more evenly matched than I think some people think. With that being said, it kind of comes down to that whole what's already in place, because I think that the things that are kind of staying stable from last year, the things that you're going to see show up in week 1, other things take time to establish. And with that in mind, I think Chicago has more of those things in place. I think like you pointed out, the defense is pretty good. I have no idea what to expect of Tennessee. I don't think anybody does. I don't think Tennessee knows what to expect of themselves yet. So walking into Chicago and having to face their defense, I think will be the difference maker. Like you said, what their offense is could be anything. It's a wild card right now. But I would still take them. I think that it's a more consistent pick over Tennessee, but I could see that being a close game. Yep. Next up, Cincinnati, New England. I actually think this one might be kind of an interesting game. New England's had a challenging season last year. I think that I'm not even 100% sure that they've solved or figured out a lot of their question marks yet. So I think for me, it makes this one an easy pick for Cincinnati. I think that they have a number of kind of just get it done players that have shown that that's what they're going to do, kind of going in. And New England has a lot of too many question marks for me to even take a risky pick on this one. So I don't even necessarily see that being a particularly close one. But that's my take. Do you see any hope for New England in that one?
Last year they had a good defense. That was their excuse me. That was their one kind of saving grace, or one positive thing you could really say about them. But part of the big changes they had in the offseason were the loss of Bill Belichick. And while I like Gerard Mayo, I don't really have much of a sample size of him. This is his first real coaching gig. It's his first head coaching gig, excuse me. So question marks abound, but they don't know what Drake May is, but we all know what Jacoby Brissett is. And I'm not saying anything bad about him. He's either the best backup or one of the worst starters. And I'm sorry, that's just kind of what they are. And most people can't even name one of their wide receivers. I don't think Hunter Henry is even going to start the season. They're pretty happy about Ramondre Stevenson as their running back. I'm like, okay, that's great. But I can't even talk myself into that. I don't even know that I could talk myself into them covering the spread. So, Cincinnati, while they did start out last year a bit rough, they're coming into this year healthy. I don't know that Joe Burrow's M&M hair is going to help, but whatever, regardless of it. I think they'll probably win this one. It's in Cincinnati. It's one of those where I might, Cincinnati may win by 15 points, but we still may hit the under because New England just may not score much at all. So, I would be with you on that one. I'll also take Cincinnati. I look forward to the parts in the season that I think we will inevitably get to where we actually get to see Drake May play some. I respect what they're doing and letting him sit for a while, and maybe it's 8 weeks or
Agreed.
10 weeks, whatever. Maybe he didn't ever set foot on the field, but I kind of doubt it. I think he'll play at some point. So that will at least
Yeah.
be interesting, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. So let's see. Next, I like both of these teams. So next we got Houston going to Indianapolis. Um, they're favoring Houston in Indianapolis by 3. And the thing is going to be about 50 points scored. 48.5 is the over-under. I kind of went back and forth with this when I have a coworker who's a big Colts fan, and he's tried to kind of pump them up, and I like some of what they've done, and I like Anthony Richardson, but the fact of the matter is he played 4 games last year and really only played all of 2 of them. So we just hadn't seen much. I think there's going to be a couple of plays where he runs wild and jacks up 30 yards on you, but I don't have any reason really to trust him as a passer yet, which you're going to have to be a good passer to beat Houston and what they got going on, because C.J. Stroud proved everything that we needed to see and more last year. So I'm definitely picking Houston here. They should more than cover. No disrespect, of course, to Indianapolis. I keep going back to Houston. Anthony Richardson is still going to be one of the most fascinating, fun guys to watch this season through the entire NFL. He may be like just the next Cam Newton, kind of just like, I can't believe he did that kind of guy. But I need to see it in action for a real, like, he hadn't even played a quarter of a season. So, like, I just need to see it for a minute before I really give him, like, the one up. I think they do have a solid defense. Their wide receiver group's improved. But, yeah, I'm going to pick Houston here because they seem to have just caught lightning in a bottle, and they're trying to go with it. So, definitely picking Houston. About you?
Same. I again, I could see this game being a close one. This, I think, is like probably the second game I would love to watch at the 10 o'clock. I think this could be a very telling game in a lot of ways. Like, hey, what does Houston look like coming back right into the season? Are they going to, one of the things I always worry about with quarterbacks is sophomore slump. Will we see any of that or not? Kind of out of, them. I think having his full wide receiver core back and healthy is going to be fun to see how they work, because, man, like you were talking about lightning in a bottle, just how widespread that was, but in that team, do they walk right back into that? Do they need a minute to figure it out? Will be very interesting. In Indianapolis, also, we've talked about other teams having question marks, but I think all of their question marks are very positive ones. It's not a question of, is this good? It's a question of, how good is this? And so I think they're a very interesting, fun team to look at. It would be an upset for them to win, but not a shocking one. But I would still take. I plan. I would take Houston in this matchup for sure. But it is probably the other game that I'd like to watch there. That probably shortly behind that is a Miami Jacksonville game. I think Miami. We know what Miami is, and I expect them to kind of come out of the gate with their offense running on all cylinders and just going crazy, right? Which is kind of what they do. But Jacksonville, I still feel like Jacksonville could potentially be on the edge of, like, hey, can they take another step and be a little bit more consistent, a little bit more aggressive, productive? And so I'll be very interested to see how that game plays out as well. I would still take Miami. I think that they're a little bit more refined as an overall team. They're more consistent in their productivity. I don't know how a defense really stops them all game. I don't know that Jacksonville has the defense to do it anyway, but it'll be I think that would be a fun game also to watch.
Yeah.
Where are you at on that?
Yeah, I'd probably agree. It being at Miami, not that it really matters. Jacksonville and Miami have the same climate, but roughly.
Yeah.
One has gators and one doesn't, I suppose. But anyway, like it's roughly the same, and they're only favored Miami by 3.5. I'm just like, I really feel like Miami's more than 3.5 points better than Jacksonville, even if they were at a neutral site. So, and it's not really disrespect to Jacksonville. I just don't know that they did anything to push them up to where Miami is, and Miami didn't really get tons worse. They lost that. They lost the guard Hunt. They lost defensive lineman out to he's with the Raiders now. Really good players and all that, but they added in some good stars as well. So I'm just like, I just don't see them getting a whole lot worse. And it's also weird to think that Tariq Hill is 30 years old now.
That's crazy.
Yeah, right. I thought he was going to be like 26 forever, but it's just not how it works. But at some point he's going to lose a step, and we'll see how that affects him. But still, they run that's everyone thinks Miami. They think Tua and Tariq and so on, but it's like, man, they have one of the most, at times at least, prolific run games that anyone in the league has. That Devon Achane and Mostert, and so it's, yeah. I guess the much shorter. I could have made this like a 3-second bet and just been like Miami, but I'm going to pick Miami, and I picked them to cover as well. And I need it too. So, I'm going rather analog with my keeping track of things over here.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, the old school. So next, I feel like we have for me, a fairly easy game to pick, which is Carolina at New Orleans.
Sure.
Now, New Orleans is one of those under the radar teams from last year that had the same record as Tampa, who won their division. They just lost the tiebreaker. They weren't. They were decent everywhere, but not great anywhere, kind of a thing. Like a true what used to be 8-8 team, which is now like 8-8 or 8-9 or 9-8. That's exactly what they were. If they can clean some of that up, Derek Carr going to year 2 with the system, something like that, maybe they can make some noise. Atlanta should be better. That's their real competition now, I think, even more than Tampa. Not trying to make this a divisional roundup or anything, but just as it applies to them and how I assess them, they should be just fine. In Carolina, while I don't see them being quite the train wreck they were last year, I don't think they did quite enough to make me think they're going to contend consistently with pretty good to really good teams. They're going to shock somebody. They beat the Texans last year, just kind of out of nowhere. But I just don't see it. So I'll just have to stick with the easy pick here and go with New Orleans. I guess I'd be tempted to not take the points and say that this is some weird, nasty divisional game and they win by like 2 or something. But yeah, I could see this being a kind of a slugfest that goes 18-19 or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of where I land with this one. For me, I want to make it more complex than it probably actually is. So, what about you?
I mean, it's a game where I would love to see Carolina win. And that's not to root against New Orleans per se. It's just, like you said, Carolina was a train wreck last year. And similar to you, I don't really know that I see like how exactly the steps playing out to say, hey, we've evened this all out. Hey, we figured out some things. So it would be fun to see them win and go, oh, okay, look, now we know how they've figured A, B, and C out. But I don't see it. I think that New Orleans, like you said, they're considerably more consistent in what they've got and how they're going to play. Again, Derek Carr is hard to root against. I mean, he's a guy who wills wins, and it's hard to root against those quarterbacks in general. So no, I agree with you. I think my difference would only be in I could see this being a 3 or 4 score difference kind of game without much of a. In fact, I'd almost be surprised if it wasn't. So yeah, I think that's an easy pick for New Orleans for me. I think a more competitive potentially more competitive game might be the New York and Minnesota game. I think there's just so many interesting question marks. Who doesn't like to see Justin Jefferson go out and destroy whoever it is that he plays against for the most part and all of that? Do I think that, the Giants have a solution to that? That would be interesting to see. That's great, but there's just a lot of question marks as to what's really working on that offense and how is it going to function. So I'm actually considering that New York might pull off one here. I think that would be a bit of an upset, but I could kind of see New York playing at home, pulling off a win here, just to get the season started. I could see that going. So I'm actually going to take the Giants on this one as my kind of upset pick and see how it plays out. What are your thoughts?
Kind of similar. we've talked in the past about how I separate games into like three types of games. Like there's good games,
Yeah.
bad games, and meaningful games.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say there's good, meaningful games as well, whatever. But like for this one, this is probably not all that meaningful in the long term of the season because as I think we
Yeah.
both still kind of like Minnesota from years past where we've rooted for guys like
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson and such. But it's I'm sad to say I don't think this is their year, especially with JJ McCarthy, their guy going down and so on. So this should be a good game because both teams are kind of in the same spot, albeit for different
Mhm.
reasons. Like if both of these teams in the year at 7-10, I won't be surprised. So they're very evenly matched. It could be kind of fun to watch actually. I think the run game will exist. One of the big fun
Yeah.
things will be, of course, Justin Jefferson on one side and the kind of sort of heir apparent Malik Neighbors on the other. And can they get him the ball either in space or what, anyway, any which way? And can he maybe
Yeah.
be a difference maker? It'd be weird to see New York not have Saquon even on their roster. I've got kind of used to that, but that should be fun. I don't even. Sometimes I forget who Minnesota's running back even is right now. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm actually still interested in this. Nobody's looking at their running back. It's all about Justin Jefferson anyway. So, this one I'm definitely torn on. The ESPN thinks that Minnesota is going to go into New York and win. They actually really like their defense, even without Danielle Hunter and such. And they did some things last year. So, yeah, I guess I would probably go. I'd probably go Minnesota. I think they'll pull it off somehow. I could see it being really close, but I'll take Minnesota here. So hopefully that'll just be a good game. So next we move into the midday bracket at 4:05. Got a couple of games there, and they look interesting. Some of these will at least have some interesting storylines going into them. So the first one is Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Chargers. A lot of interesting things changed here. Los Angeles is in a complete rebuild, and there's a wide range of expectations being put on them this year. Of course, they got Jim Harbaugh, but their expectations go all the way from them being a top 5 pick in the draft to being 12-5.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anyone is. Now, that being said, I guess they fall closer to they're going to go like 7-10 this year. I don't think that Jim Harbaugh, great as I think he is, has a magic win wand and it's just going to make everything better. And he didn't, when he came into San Francisco 49ers all those years ago, like that team was mostly built and he added to it, right? And then when he went to Michigan, it's easier in college, I think, to try to bring things together because you can bring in all these recruits because you got a big name and there's no salary cap and contract structures and things like that. Kind of everyone's available. Here, he's having to tear it down before he builds it back up. And I think he's going to need at least a year to get that going. I really like Justin Herbert and a lot of what they've done there, but I just don't think he's going to be able to make them a contender this year. On the other side of this is the Raiders, who did strange things this offseason. I really liked Brock Bowers, the tight end they drafted. They brought in that defensive lineman from Miami, who I keep forgetting what his name is. It's going to drive me crazy. I'll look it up later. But anyway, so they should have, I think, a sneaky good defense. But I am not the biggest Gardner Minshew believer. I like the guy. He's fun. But he's Ryan Fitzpatrick minus. And so I just don't have great faith in him. So this is one of the hardest games for me to pick. I guess I'll go with the Chargers. I'm going to say kind of a low-scoring affair here. But yeah, I'll go with the Chargers here. What's your thoughts on this one?
Same. I think I'm going same. I think for the Chargers overall, I think they've got a little bit more put together. I do like Gardner Minshew as well. He, in the sense that he is that guy who I feel like has kind of done that whole willed some games at times, like we like to talk about with Fitzmagic. But he's just not consistent. It's like he needs some help. He needs some help, and I'm not sure what that help looks like right now. So I think Las Vegas has some interesting pieces that they've added that have the potential to really um, take off and be contributors. I think in particular in the wide receiver core, but we don't know who they are. Like we don't know what they are at this point in time. So I'll be interested to see where they're at mid-season. But I think right now, as far as safe pick goes, I'll stick with Los Angeles on this one. Like you, I see that being fairly low scoring game overall. Relatively close game, fairly low scoring. Should be an interesting, find out their identity kind of game between those two
Yeah.
teams. Probably not terribly unlike Seattle and Denver. I kind of feel like this is a very similar setup where both teams have a little bit of their identity, but have had some change. They need to figure out, okay, what are we and who are we going into this season? Uh, I think I think for me the big differentiator is where this game is being played. It's a tough field to go to and win. I see that being a factor to kind of push an uneven offense, out of it. So I'll take Seattle in this game. Do you see any hope here for Denver? Do you think they've figured out their things enough to go into Seattle and pull out a win? Where are you at on this?
Hope for Denver long term? Yes. We talked about it before or during the
Yeah.
draft, since the draft. That I like Bo Nix, but this game, if this was after Thanksgiving and we had seen some stuff from some growth, some just some exposure for Bo Nix in particular, and see what he can do, then I'd feel so much more comfortable about this one. But I guess that's one of the joys of Week 1. But yeah, that's my hope for them long term. I liked what I saw from him a little bit in the preseason. It's preseason, but there were just some things he was doing that seemed very decisive and it made me somewhat confident in him. But as much as I hate Seattle, I cannot quite project enough of that to delude myself into thinking that Seattle's going to lose. It will be interesting to see Seattle without old man chewing his gum on the side. But the guy they got is the DC from Baltimore last year, I believe, and he's been putting together great defense after great defense after great defense. So I'm at least confident in him there. Never been the biggest Geno believer, but he knows how to work with guys, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think Seattle wins. They're favored by 6. It's in Seattle, so they're favored by 3. No, 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd probably pick Seattle with the points. Maybe just like flat out 6 or even 7. But it should be interesting. I can't remember. I think Seattle won the last matchup between these 2 years ago when Russ went there. I think that's right. Just like an in your face, yeah, you got Russ, and we're still going to beat you kind of a thing. So I'm sure there's some some slightly bad blood, but
Sure.
not my problem. But yeah, I think Seattle is going to be just fine in this one. They should pull it off. Darn it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I guess. And lastly, I'd take the over. I think they'll cut Bo Nix loose. Like even if they end up down by 14, they're just gonna be like, "Hey, go get see if you can go get it," kind of a thing. So I take the over. Maybe some jump points at the end. Now, fun one for you. Hopefully, fun one for
Let's
you.
hope so. Let's hope so.
Dallas at Cleveland. They're only favoring Cleveland by 2.5, which tells me they think this is basically just an even matchup. It's not going to be cold in Cleveland yet. It's barely September, so should be just fine. But Cleveland both teams have huge questions. I'll probably leave most of the addressing of these things to you since it's more your baby than mine. But for Cleveland, can Deshaun Watson stay healthy and look anywhere kind of sort of near what he looked like in Houston in 2020? So thus far, the answer's been no. But every year there's some little bit of optimism, and we'll see what he can do. The rest of their teams still, they're still going to be probably almost certainly a top 10 defense. They have a great O-line. They're going to be missing Nick Chubb for probably upwards of the first half of the season, maybe call it 6 or 7 games. but they've always been able to manufacture the run.
Mm.
But then y'all, y'all are so weird. Like, you may drop 40 points on them just despite everyone who thinks Cleveland has a great defense. So it's one of the harder games to predict. So estimation, I guess I think I picked Cleveland for this one, just thinking that y'all might have a little bit of sorting out to do to start out the season, but we'll see. I'll pick Cleveland.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. While I'm just going to cut straight to the bit on where I'm going. I'm going to go Dallas, obviously, but you're not wrong. I think that offensively we have a lot of question marks. Offensively, our running game is questionable. There's this great video of Zeke running through an obstacle at camp or during practice, I should say, and just how badly in pain he looks in his knees after that. It's really a concerning video if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan. Like, oh, that's encouraging. That's our starting running back. They've obviously reached out and got some help in that area, but it very much feels like the entire season now rests on Dak Prescott's shoulders as opposed to normal where it rests on his shoulders. And then, of course, there's the CeeDee Lamb situation and how ready is he? Like obviously he's a phenomenal athlete. What will he be in game one? Who knows, right? So there's a lot of question marks for sure going into a great defense. But with that being said, I think there's also a few question marks on our defense as far as some moving parts. We obviously had a few challenges against Green Bay in the playoffs. So we were exploitable there. I would assume that there are potentially areas that we've got to pay attention to. Cleveland's can be a good team, I think, but like you said, is Deshaun Watson going to evolve back into what he was? I also feel like with Nick out, even though they have other good viable running back options, which is great, none of them are as consistent or dynamic as Nick, and so now it feels like that's more on Deshaun, who has struggled to be the guy. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out. I still see Dallas taking this one. I kind of get the feeling that I expect Dallas defense will solve Cleveland's offense more than it is that our offense will solve their defense, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's kind of my expectation. I think it will be a challenging game. I think it's kind of a one mistake game where somebody's going to make the big mistake. That's what's going to cost somebody the game. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's my hope and expectation running in there. My pick's Dallas.
Very good.
But Tampa Bay, Washington. I actually think this could be a pretty fun game. I think Washington has made some interesting steps to solidify what I think was actually a bit of a surprising season for them last year. I think that they achieved more than I had expected and been more competitive than I was expecting them to be. So going into this season, I'll be interested to see where they're at. I think Tampa Bay always kind of, not always, but seems to kind of be right around the same point. They seem to be a competitive team each year. So I will still pick Tampa Bay. I still think that they're the more secure bet on this one. But I think Washington could make this a more competitive game overall. Where do you sit on this one?
Yeah, kind of similar to you. Like, when I say Washington, similar to you, exceeded expectations last year, I'm acknowledging they were 4-13. But at the same time, like they were in there with Philly twice. And even when Philly was still hot, not just at the end when Philly was coming down to earth, like they were aggressive.
Competitive.
It's going to be hard to predict now so much because similar to some of the other teams we talked about, they got a lot of new. New quarterback, new head coach, new OC, so on and so forth. Like Dan Quinn's up there now. My old head coach, Cliff Kingsbury, is their offensive coordinator. And then Jaden Daniels, who I like, although I'm still a little scared he's going to die. He's exciting too. So as much as I might bash on Cliff Kingsbury from time to time out of frustration, he did put up points frequently. So I would take the over here over under
Yeah.
43.5. I would probably take that. Tampa Bay's defense is starting to come back down to earth, and their offense is going to need to pick up some of that slack, or young players. But a lot of guys are just aged out, basically. It would seem. They can prove me wrong, but prove me wrong. That's fine. But I think they're really leaning on Baker Mayfield going into year 2. He also lost his offensive coordinator, who's now the guy in Carolina. So we'll see how all that shifts. We still got Mike Evans, who's turning into the next ageless wonder. I still got Chris Godwin, who might have a 2-yard game or a 200-yard game. You just never really know. So I think they're solid. Yeah, I think I'm with you. I'd take Tampa here. They should be able to win and cover being 3.5 if you're not looking at it. So, yeah, hopefully that could be a really fun one to watch. I mean, I'll be busy. I'll probably be watching the Dallas game more than anything, but to kind of keep track of it, it'll be fun. So, that's the end of the midday games. Then we've got the Sunday night football game. And I think a lot of people have this pegged to be like a potential NFC championship preview. So we've got Los Angeles Rams at the Detroit Lions. Detroit's favored by basically home field plus half a point, and then an over-under of 50.5. So they're not super high on defense in this one. But this one, similar to Seattle, though to a lesser degree, I have to try not to project my my hopes for failure toward my rivals, although they probably don't see us as rivals at all. We've talked in the past, though we didn't acknowledge it today, the loss of Jason Kelce for the Eagles. And I was like, man, they're probably going to feel that. The brotherly shove or whatever you're going to call it is a big part of what they do. As much as it's 1 yard at a time, it's a very important yard very frequently. And if they're going to feel that loss, and I think they are, the Rams are absolutely going to feel the loss of Aaron Donald. I mean, from a guy who's watched him play against my Cardinals twice a year for quite some time now, I get tired of seeing it take 3 of our guys to stop this one dude. And they didn't just instantly replace that because you can't. I mean, a lot of people like Jared Hurts that they drafted out of Florida State this last offseason, and that's great, but I have no reason to believe he's Aaron Donald. So they're going to feel that. They do have a really good coach. Matthew Stafford, when healthy, can still really sling it. There's a countdown on how much longer he's got in the league, but we don't really know where that clock is. For guys like Tom Brady, it was 44, 45. For guys like Matt Ryan, it was like 37, 38. So we just don't know. But for the time being, I have no reason to predict like a dramatic fall off this year, the old Max Kellerman cliff kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So they should still be solid. On the other end of it, Detroit for me is probably, spoiler, my at least going into week 1, they're probably my NFC Super Bowl representation, whatever. Yeah. And so they're extremely balanced. They're extremely well run. And I'm absolutely picking them to win this game. I'll take the under as far as the over-end is concerned, but I would take Detroit here. You can say I'm projecting against the Rams if you want. That's perfectly fine.
But you know me, I'm more than happy to project against the Rams. It's not going to hurt my feelings. But yeah, I agree. I think Detroit is singularly the most exciting younger team in the league. I think they're poised to potentially kind of come up and make a run for kind of that Kansas, like, hey, we're perennial fighting for late playoff runs every year. They just seem well stacked for that. And like you said, they're well run organizationally. They just seem to have everything kind of going together, and that helps with continuity. So no, I agree. I think Detroit's a hard pick to not take. So it's an easy pick, I guess I should say. But with that being said, like you were talking about Matt Stafford and like how he just hangs in there. To be fair, we were talking about how the Bears have a great wide receiver core and all that. The offensive weapons, though, that he has to go to are both experienced, Nakua Lessa, but like just amazing people to get to go to that I think will keep him relevant for a couple of years, yet to come. But it's probably something that they should be looking at down the road because, like you said, you can't survive forever. So yeah, easy pick for Detroit, I think, on that one, especially at home. It's like there's nothing not to like there. And again, I could see that. My guess would be that that'll be them by a margin. We'll see, unless like you said, the Rams defense jumps up and surprises me, and with filling that gap that they obviously have. So we'll see how that plays out, but that would be my guess. I'm actually really looking forward to the Monday night game. I was watching the Jets play in their first game when Aaron went down. I was so excited to just see what is this team and what could they do. I'm not really a Jets fan, but just the way that they had built that, I love that they went all in, not just with getting Aaron, but with a lot of the other pieces. Their defense is terrifying. And then to watch all of that just kind of get crushed. And, of course, nothing against their backups, but, the fall off between Aaron Rodgers and most other quarterbacks is a long ways. Where it ended up falling there was a long way down. And so there's just no recovering. So I'm very excited to see Aaron play going in and just how that offense works. With that being said, I'm still going to go ahead and take San Francisco. It's hard not to. I know that they've had some moving parts and there's some questions there a little bit, but we're talking about their question marks are, well, how great are they? It's not, are they great? They're great. It's just, how great are they? So I still think it's their game to lose, especially at home. So my money's on them, but I'm really excited for this game. I think there's a chance the Jets could come out and just be an Aaron Rodgers team. I mean, you go back to, if we're talking about which quarterback can will a win, are we talking Aaron Rodgers versus Purdy? Like, please, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers in that specific. I just don't know what the rest of the team looks like yet.
Yeah, mostly the same. I do have a different. My conclusion's different, but mostly the same assessment if they're too, outside of the air to watch. I'm always a little. San Francisco is probably the rival that I find it easiest to watch because I love the way they've built their team. We both have always liked Christian McCaffrey. Watching him and watching him become dominant has been really fun, despite the fact that he scored 7 touchdowns against my Cardinals last year. Thanks, bud. But they have a few. I guess I'm rationalizing a Jets win here based off of just a few things. One, Aaron Rodgers, and I just lost it, but that offensive coordinator he had back in Green Bay, who's there with him now, they had San Francisco's number for quite a while. Not like they were dumping 50 points on him or anything, but like they just managed to win repeatedly. They were a thorn in their side all the time. New York came out last year against Buffalo again, against a ton, like instant adversity, and somehow managed to win that game, not get derailed immediately, and win that game against Buffalo. And San Francisco has three of their best players who have been very limited or just haven't practiced at all. Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, and Christian McCaffrey. Now, Christian is just a little dinged up. We don't know the extent of that. That could be a bruised heel. That could be a broken foot. We don't know. But he's expected to play. So, okay. That's great. I think it might be just enough to slow them down. We'll see. Sure. They still have a ton of other weapons. Still got Deebo Samuel. They still got George Kittle. It's weird to think Kittle's starting to get up there. But they could rely on him for a game or two here and there, and he could really make some noise. So we'll see. But I am going to pick the Jets here. I know it's just kind of a gut feeling, but that is what I'm going to go with. And I'll say that, well, I guess the line's irrelevant because it would be them winning. But I just barely the over-under is tough here. But we're talking like 21-23 would hit the over on it. So, yeah, I'll take the over on that. But I'll take the Jets. Jets. The Rich Eisen will be very happy if that happens.
Yeah, no joke.
Yep. So, Yeah, that kind of concludes. Do you have any final thoughts on any of these games aside from our obvious two, Dallas and Arizona? Are there any other games that you're like really honing on? You kind of mentioned a couple of them, but
Mhm.
is there one game in particular that has like special intrigue for you?
Uh, I think that it's really for me. It's kind of that. I think the Houston Indianapolis game is the other one that I really want to kind of keep an eye on. I find, again, can Houston really come out and just enter the season where they left off? Are they going to come in firing on all cylinders? And then, where is Indianapolis? Like, where did they end up? What if they got working? What if they got going? I just feel like there's a lot of identity found in that game. I'll be interested to see how that plays out. So I think that for me is another game. It's the other game that I'm kind of like, all right, let me keep an eye on that one. What about
Yeah,
you? What are you looking at?
that's one of them for sure. Guys, that guy at work always talks about them, so I end up
Yep.
learning a lot about them as things go on. It's a good bit of the teams that had a lot of change, right? Those are the ones that really intrigue me. So, where'd they go? I just lost them. Tennessee and Chicago. There's just a lot of changes on both teams, particularly Chicago. Read a stat. Chicago fans, cover your ears for a second. But so to break the rookie passing record, Caleb Williams has to average 129 yards passing a game.
Hmm.
That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. He has to average like
Yeah.
0.7 touchdowns a game. I mean, it's just like, guys, come on now.
Wow.
So, like, to see, did they finally get their guy? I don't know how many times I've seen the list come up of like, hey, what was the last 4,000-yard passer for all the franchises? And they've never had one. And it's just like, my gosh. So, even though I'm not the biggest Chicago fan, I don't have anything against them. I had good friends who were
Yeah.
Chicago fans. I am excited about the potential of their future. Did they get a guy, even if he's not the next Patrick Mahomes? Did they get a guy that is actually relevant? Like that the team's relevant because of him, not just like, well, we've kind of got this guy, we kind of Jay Cutler or whoever. Like no,
Mm-hmm.
we're good and we're confident we're going to be good because of our quarterback. I'd love to see that
Yeah.
for them. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's one of them. But it's week one, man. I'm curious, like how right or how wrong am I about every single team that we just talked about? So
Yeah.
yep. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. We got less than 24 hours till the first game, and yeah. So unless you got anything else, let's wrap up this section. And if anybody has any comments they think we're completely stupid, you can write it down below. Let us know what you think. Catch y'all later.